Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I hope the jury remained silent during their recess, and we're going to continue looking at the trial of the 30-6 versus 2024. Have you made up your mind yet? Have you decided on what the verdict is already? Well, let's continue to look at the evidence. The number one thing that the prosecution brought up in the last episode is how inefficient the 30-6 is compared to everything else. Well, let's see how true that is. Well, if you remember in the last session of the trial, we saw that the 30-6 was in the bottom middle of the pack when it came to big game bullets with their energy at distance. So if we look at the efficiency of each of these cartridges pushing these projectiles, you'll notice the numbers start to look a little bit different. So if we look at the amount of foot-pounds per grain of powder that we get with these cartridges, things look quite a bit differently. The 30-6 actually barely edges out the 6.5 Creedmoor. The 6.8 Western is very close behind both of them, with the 300 Winchester Magnum and the 7 PRC being right at equal, and the 308 Winchester is slightly below those. So it would appear with at least heavy hunting bullets for each of these cartridges, the 30-6 is actually extremely efficient for what it is. So that's energy. Let's take a look at the velocity numbers and see what they say. So you'll remember when we looked at the velocity at the big game bullets, it's a very similar picture to the energy. The 30-6 is in the bottom middle of the pack, close to the 6.8 Western, but not quite. So if we take a look at the amount of feet per second we get per grain of powder pushing these projectiles, the 6.5 Creedmoor takes the cake. Right behind it, however, is that 30-6. And actually in third place, the 308 Winchester. It's a little bit more efficient than the 6.8, the 7 PRC, and the 300 Winchester Magnum. So, upon this evidence for the big game hunting projectiles loaded into these cartridges, the 30-6 is providing a very good middle ground as far as the actual numbers that it puts up, and it is efficiently putting these numbers up. So, at least with the big game hunting cartridges, it looks like the defense has a point. Let's look at the dangerous game loads now and see how they compare. So if we look at the dangerous game loads as far as energy is concerned, the 308 Winchester and the 6.5 Creedmoor don't even start out enough to take dangerous game with those cartridges. The 30-6 is very close to the adequate numbers given by P.O. Ackley, and it stays within the minimum out to about 200 yards or so. And if we look at the efficiency at which these cartridges provide this energy, they look very, very similar. There's a caveat to this. The 7 PRC, there isn't really a heavy round nose that I found that was commonly available, so we had to use the 175 grain ELDX loading from Hornady. The 6.8 Western as well, there was a few larger projectiles, but nothing really matched the ballistics coefficient of the round noses and the other cartridges. So we just went ahead and put these in there for now. They're similar grain weight. They're at the high end of what these cartridges can push. But with that being said, these cartridges are very, very similar. If anything, the 6.5 Creedmoor takes a slight lead over the 30-6, very slightly, with a 160 grain round nose. With the 220 grain round nose, the 30-6 is very, very close behind it. The 308 Winchester is actually a little bit more efficient than the 6.8 Western. It's more efficient than the 7 PRC and 300 Winchester Magnum as far as the energy per grain of powder. So the prosecution could still say the 6.5 Creedmoor is the most efficient. However, the 30-6 is right on its tail, and the 6.5 Creedmoor doesn't even give you the energy to do what the 30-6 can do. So with this data, we can see that the 30-6 is adequate to do some of the jobs at close range that the other larger calibers can do. It's not as efficient as the 6.5 Creedmoor, but the 6.5 Creedmoor can't do what the 30-06 can do on paper. This is, I'm sure everybody's killed Sasquatch with their 6.5 Creedmoor or their 308 Winchester or whatever. These are just numbers to have as a benchmark. So now let's take a look at the velocities each of these cartridges provide. So for the actual velocity over time, the 30-06 falls in the middle of the pack. As far as efficiency, the 6.5 Creedmoor takes the cake. Right behind it is the 308 Winchester. Right after that is the 6.8 Western with that 165 grain AccuBond long range. And then in fourth place, you have the 30-06 Springfield. So you could say that the 6.5 Creedmoor is more efficient with the velocity. However, it doesn't provide the level of velocity the 30-06 has. And over time, the 6.5 Creedmoor runs out of the amount of velocity to expand that projectile properly at about 250 yards. If we look further down the chart, the 30-06 is more efficient than the 7 PRC or the 300 Winchester Magnum. However, looking at these charts, it's the flip-flop of the 6.5 comparison. The 30-06 is more efficient than the other two cartridges, but they also give a hell of a lot more energy on target downrange than the 30-06 does. You can't see this right now from your view, but the prosecuting attorney is getting a little flustered, tapping his papers really loud. We're hearing a lot of objections, hearsay, and whatnot. And the defense attorney is getting a little too cocky too. He's starting to bow his chest out a little bit and do some finger wagging and some smiling. The defense attorney for the 30-06 is also getting cocky because if you noticed, we're starting to see where that 30-06 is doing a little bit of everything. It's not doing it nearly as well as the Magnum cartridges, but it's definitely doing it better than the short action cartridges. But calm yourself down, we still have to talk about the varmint to light deer loadings that all of these cartridges can do. So if we look at the energy provided by all these cartridges with light deer or heavy varmint projectiles, the game starts to change a little bit. The 30-06 is in the middle of the pack with the 308 Winchester almost mirroring it, and the 6.5 Creedmoor eventually overtaking it. However, we look at the top of the chart, the 300 Winchester Magnum has quite a bit more energy than the 6.8 Western does, just due to the velocity, but over time that 6.8 Western catches up and it starts to kind of put the hurt on the 300 Winchester Magnum further down range. And there's a motion struck against the 7PRC. It did not have a projectile light enough to play this game, and it's pouting, so we're going to give it some unsportsmanlike conduct or something like that, whatever happens in the courtrooms. And if we look at the efficiency of the energy provided by these cartridges, the 308 Winchester actually takes the cake, followed right by the 6.5 Creedmoor. Then the 6.8 Western and the 300 Winchester Magnum are almost tied. And at the end of the chart is the 30-06. So it's not quite as efficient as these other cartridges as far as the energy. So now let's take a look at the velocity that these things can provide. So with the velocity provided, the 30-06 is in the middle, right in the middle of the pack. The 300 Winchester Magnum is still way above. The 6.8 Western is slightly below the 300 Winchester Magnum, but catches up quite a bit out to 500. The 6.5 Creedmoor catches up and passes the 30-06 and the 308 at distance as well, but it starts out quite a bit slower. So if we look at the efficiency side of the velocity, the 308 Winchester reigns as king. The 6.5 Creedmoor is right behind that. The 30-06 is right in the middle, and the 6.8 Western barely edges out the 300 Winchester Magnum. So now we're starting to see at the bottom end of the scale where the 30-06 doesn't reign king. It can still do what a lot of the other cartridges can, it just can't do it quite as efficiently, and with that ballistics coefficient not being the same as the 6.5 Creedmoor and the other cartridges, it doesn't retain that velocity or the energy quite the same at distance. So now, jury, please go out and deliberate and come back when you have a verdict.
Another guy
And the jury has reached a decision. Number one, the 30-06 is totally not a boomer cartridge. But it is. You should still absolutely give your buddies hell for buying one. That's what we do when we buy cartridges. We don't care about the statistics. Is the 30-06 inefficient? Absolutely not. But when you start getting into hand loading, you will notice when it comes to barrels, barrel lengths, primers, you will get all sorts of different numbers with different types of powders. Most of these data points that I showed you are generic and they're averages. You could find a 30-06 that is more efficient than anything else out there depending on the powder, and you can have some of these other cartridges absolutely stomp it into the ground as far as efficiency. This is a really loaded question in the firearms industry, and you really take all the numbers and data that you see out there with a grain of salt, because there's so many different things they can go into how efficient your cartridge is. You can have a general benchmark like I've shown you and like other very fantastic YouTubers have. However, that should not be your end all be all. Once you buy the cartridge, and you may notice it's wildly different than what you thought. And even if you load that extremely efficient load, or you work that up, you may find out that your gun doesn't like it. There's an issue with how it works. There's pressure curves involved. You may get too low on the side of things. You may get too high on the side of things. Look at the recent controversy with the 7PRC and the box velocity not matching what people are getting with their chronographs. As if Hornady didn't know that people were going to find this out, because everybody and their brother owns a chronograph these days. And if they're more than willing to post a velocity or a data point and it be at best misleading, if not kind of a lie, think of what the other data that you'll see out there from different YouTubers, from different data forums and whatnot. Not saying anyone else is out there is dishonest or intentionally misleading, but if you buy a rifle in a particular cartridge, or you load your own ammo, or you use factory ammo, be very, very aware that the box velocity and or the data may not equal what your rifle gets. Your rifle may get better, it may get worse. That's just the nature of tolerances and how firearms work. Verdict number 3. Absolutely, the 30-06 is extremely versatile. However, on the two extremes, it will not do as well as some of the other cartridges. The higher BCs of some of the lighter projectiles or the smaller calibers will absolutely take over at distance. Also, some of the shorter cartridges don't take as much powder to burn and to push these projectiles efficiently. At the top end of the scale as well, the 30-06 will not compete with some of the magnums out there, especially some of the high BC magnums like the 6.8 Western and the 7mm PRC. However, it'll do enough of the job to get quite a bit of the results. And finally, to piggyback off the last one, absolutely the 30-06 maintains its niche with modern components. It is actually catching up to a lot of the other cartridges. The very high BC projectiles are keeping the 30-06 relevant within what it has always been used for. The niche of the 30-06 is to give someone that one turnkey option, whether you want to go hunt big game in Africa, you want to hunt American dangerous game up to brown bear at close distance, you want to hunt light deer, and even varmints to an extent. Will it do every one of these jobs equally? Absolutely not. It's a very overpowered varmint cartridge, and it's a moderately powered large game cartridge. But if all you have is that 30-06, there's not really anything you can do short of the Big Five in Africa that you can't take ethically. If we want to talk about unethically, let's go read John Taylor's book on African cartridges and hear about how many elephant and other dangerous game in the Big Five have been taken with 7 Mauser or 6.5 by 55 Swede. Or read P.O. Ackley's book about how many moose and other large predators have been taken in Alaska with the 220 Swift. Like, keep it within the context, but if we want to go there, we can go there. So, should friends let friends buy 30-06s? It's always a wise utilitarian choice. However, you should buy your cartridge based on your needs and what you're trying to do with it. Do not base it on what's the cool kids say. Don't base it on what you dream of doing. Think about what you are doing and keep the 30-06 in the back of your mind. I hope you enjoyed this video. It was a real learning adventure for me doing these last two parts. I learned a lot about the 30-06. I learned a lot about a couple of the other cartridges that we compared to. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you liked it. If you watched this video to the end, please let me know what's your favorite hunting cartridge is and why. Thank you very much. Y'all have a good one. Goodbye.